Hey, my name's Ian Begley. You're watching the NBA Exchange with Dexter Henry.
What's up, everybody? Dexter Henry, the host of the NBA Exchange here. Hopefully, everybody had a fantastic weekend. And over this weekend, things changed really quickly in the NBA. Some series where we thought one team was going to be cruising right along to a victory. Now, things are a lot closer. And unbelievably already, one second-round NBA series is over. All that coming up on the NBA Exchange. Just last week, the Brooklyn Nets were up 2-0 in their series against the Milwaukee Bucks, but Milwaukee had a big weekend, squeaking out a 3-point win in Game 3, and then Game 4 was dominated by the Milwaukee Bucks. They had a great performance, 34 points from Giannis Antetokounmpo, who was pretty much dominant throughout in a 107-96 win for the Milwaukee Bucks. A lot of story will be around the Bucks. They did what they had to do at home. They evened the series at 2. But although it was a great win for the Bucks and a great performance as they will head back to Brooklyn with the series even, for Brooklyn, there was a huge loss. Kyrie Irving, injured in this contest, rolled his right ankle. X-rays on this were negative. Not still clear about what it'll be for Kyrie, whether he can play in the next game in Game 5. That'll be determined to be seen. But this shouldn't be taken away from what the Bucks have done. This could be a tall task for the Nets going forward, as they're already without James Harden. So we don't know how that's going to play out injury-wise. And Kevin Durant did not have his best game on Sunday against the Bucks. But the Bucks, as I said, they did what they had to do here. Nets won their 2 games at home. They came back and won their 2 games at home, even when their offense hasn't really looked great. And they seem to have got more confidence in Game 4. How that translates and moves over into Game 5 and the rest of the series, that will be interesting. How healthy will the Nets be? That'll also be interesting. But for now, the Bucks could at least feel good that they are right back in this series. In the Western Conference, a series that many thought would be competitive definitely was not. Talking about the series between the Suns and the Nuggets. The Suns, maybe shockingly, swept the Nuggets. That's right, 4-game sweep of the Nuggets, and they did that in a Game 4 victory, 125-118, a game that also saw the MVP, Nikola Jokic, hit the showers early after a flagrant 2 foul on Cameron Payne. I guess Jokic knew it was a wrap, was ready to say 1-2-3 Cancun. No more time for this, but we'll talk about the Nuggets in their offseason at another time. Focus has to be on the Suns. Got out to a great start in this one. This was led by the excellent performance, once again, of Chris Paul. 37 points and 7 assists in this contest. Oh, and he had help from his backcourt mate too. Devin Booker, been cooking the way he has all playoff long. 34 points to go along with 11 rebounds and 4 assists. Right now, when you're looking at the Suns, I know my producer Greg is happy about this. He's picked the Suns to go to the finals. They're looking like a well-oiled machine. Everybody knows their roles. Chris Paul looks healthy. Devin Booker looks good. DeAndre Ayton's playing well in the middle, at times outplaying the MVP Nikola Jokic in this series. And you really got to like what you're seeing from the Suns. They're confident as they're moving forward to the Western Conference Finals. They'll have some rest, a good amount of rest it'll seem, before they see their next opponent in that round. The Los Angeles Clippers, they were down 2-0 in their Western Conference semifinal series to the Utah Jazz, but they picked up a big win on Saturday, 132-106 at home over those Utah Jazz. And Clippers were in a 2-0 hole in the first round and now looking to try to do the same. To talk about the Clippers, somebody who covers the Clippers as well as anyone in the LA area, Lawrence Murray of The Athletic, covering the Clippers. He joins us here on the NBA Exchange. Law, what's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, I'm feeling good this weekend. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, glad to have you here to talk a little bit about the Clippers. Now, we look at the Clippers. It's been a roller coaster postseason for these guys already, Law. They were down 2-0 to Dallas, won 4 out of 5 when nobody thought they could, thought the Clips were going to clip again, and now down 2 again to the Utah Jazz. As someone covering the team, what has it been like covering this team, sort of not knowing what you'll get from them on a night-to-night basis?
I mean, look, they've played at this point 4 quasi-elimination games already. and they've won all of them. I mean, when you're down 2-0, you know this is the NBA. You can't go down 3-0 and come back. It hasn't been done. Not to say that it'll never be done, but like it hasn't been done for a reason. Like the game of basketball, you got to keep scoring. You can't decide games with one goal or one home run or something like that. So you're going into game 3 in Dallas. You're thinking, they got to win or it's a wrap. You're going into game 6 in Dallas. They got to win or it's a wrap. Game 7, same thing for both teams, and LA survived that. And then Saturday night in LA, once again, down 2-0. You can't go down 3-0. So this team has been resilient. I think that's something that Tyronn Lue's been talking about all season long. It has definitely been a change in character. I think people got used to the Clippers being the team that got up and couldn't handle being up, both in the series and in individual games. That hasn't been the case. Now, they have a tall task ahead of them. They have to win one game in Utah, something that they haven't done all season long, to extend this series. But then again, in a weird way, they had to win a home game in Game
Right.
7 against a Mavericks team that had gotten very comfortable at Staples Center, and they found a way to get that Game 7 win. So you can't count the Clippers out. For obvious reasons, you can't put a whole lot of confidence in the Clippers. Don't bet your house on that team. But at the same time, this team has found a way to make it clear that just because they're down, they're not out.
Yeah, they have definitely done that. So let's look at Game 3. They got that victory 132-106 at home. As you said, must win, had to have that, right? What was the difference for them in Game 3? I think a lot of people would point to Paul George. What do you think was the difference in that game that we saw from the first 2 games of the series?
Look, Paul George is the magnet for criticism, but Kawhi Leonard was not himself in the first 2 games of the series either, especially Game 2 when he had foul trouble, and that took him out of what he could do on both ends of the floor. They found something in that second half of Game 2, and I think that carried over into how they needed to approach Game 3, at least offensively. And Paul George got off to a great start. Paul was aggressive and decisive and successful. It's not easy to be all 3. You can probably have 2 of those things. He was all 3. I mean, he knew what shots he wanted. He took those shots and he made those shots. And that was key to the Clippers developing a 15-point halftime lead when Kawhi was still not himself. Kawhi missed 8 out of 12 field goals in the first half. He had more shot attempts and points. You never really want to see that. That wasn't the case in the second half. Kawhi had 24 second half points, and that's where you get your blowout. That's where you get the extension of, okay, you didn't just win the game, you dominated it. And I mean, those 24 points Kawhi scored in the second half was more than he scored in all of Game 1, more than he scored in all of Game 2. That was the difference. The 2 best players over the course of the game were the 2 best players on the floor. And when that happens for the Clippers, they are an incredible team. I mean, they won by 26 points. To be honest with you, they made so many game plan mistakes in Game 3, starting with falling down 8-0 to begin the game. They honestly could have won that game by 30 or even 40 points, and all it would have taken is cleaning up some mistakes. They didn't play a perfect game by any means in Game 3.
Yeah, Paul George, as you talked about, he's kind of been the lightning rod for things that comes to criticism with the Clippers. But he said played well, 31 points in the contest. Do you think he's turning a corner here with this performance, or you think this can be a spark for him in the series? He's got this 31-point game. He kind of stepped up when Kawhi wasn't bringing it in the first half. Do you think this could be a turning point for PG-13?
We'll see Monday night. That's all I can really say about it, because the thing with Paul George is his effectiveness for the Clippers has to go beyond scoring anyway. I think people were, they were clowning Paul, saying, oh, you finally look like playoff P, just because he finally had a 30-point game in the playoffs. Paul George's impact on this team, especially playing with Kawhi, goes beyond what he does scoring. Paul George is being asked to be the primary playmaker for this team. If you think Reggie Jackson is the point guard and more than name, then you got another thought coming. Like, Paul George he's got the ball in his hands, and it's more than just seeking points. It's more than just taking the right shots. He's got to be the one to kind of facilitate things. And then on the other end of the floor, he's got to be the one to step up defensively. And there's been plenty of games where he's done that in the playoffs. It just really, he didn't play well defensively in in game 2, especially when he had the first crack at Donovan Mitchell. He wasn't physical enough. He wasn't in his body. Donovan got to get too comfortable early on. Paul didn't have that assignment on Mitchell to begin game 3. That was Kawhi, and Kawhi had a big role in Donovan not scoring in the first quarter. But then that means Paul George has to take on more of the offensive load, and he did that. He's got to keep the same energy. The Clippers teammates that Paul George has, they said that when he's playing like he's going to be aggressive, look for a shot, it does galvanate them in a way that, I mean, you just don't always see from everybody else. The Clippers, they want to play for Paul George. So again, a lot of it is consistency. Can you have the success in the next game that you showed at a high level on a big stage the previous night? That remains to be seen.
That does remain to be seen. So, obviously, you covering the team, you heard from the players, you heard from Ty Lue after Game 3. Where's the confidence level of this team following Game 3, heading into Game 4? Is it? I would think it would be high. Is it high, or is it still in the mode of we're going to take this one game at a time, quarter to quarter, possession to possession, etc.?
I think it's both. You know, you have to have a certain respect for the game. But they were confident heading into Game 3, and they had lost 2 in a row. They had realized that they played well enough to win Games 1 and 2, and that the Jazz are a really good team, and they have a great home crowd, and they are going to need to play their game, knowing that the Jazz will make adjustments, knowing that the Jazz have another level to get to, especially if and when Mike Conley Jr. makes his debut in this series. But the Clippers have the thing with the Clippers all season has been they don't get too high or too low. They're not super excited about whatever wins they have because everyone has already told them that they wanted to see it in the playoffs. And when they lost games, they were very sure about themselves. They knew what part of the season it was. They knew that they are just trying to get to the playoffs, even though the energy is different from people who want to troll the Clippers. You know, when the Clippers win, people say wait to the playoffs. When the Clippers lost regular season games, they thought that was a validation as to why they weren't what they were saying that they should be in the playoffs. So, you know, you got a lot of people talking out of both sides of their mouth, but all that matters is what the Clippers feel of what their approach is, and they should be confident. They're here to win games, not to pander to what everybody else is thinking, whether they think more of them or less of them.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of that clip talk is out there and has been consistent. But looking at Game 4, Law, what are the keys to getting another win? Obviously, it's important. You don't want to get down 3-1. You want to even this at 2 and make it a best 2 out of 3 going back to Utah. What are the keys to the Clippers getting a victory in Game 4?
Do really the same things, just better. Just better. And I would say the Clippers made some defensive mistakes that could have changed the complexity of Game 3, but the Jazz did a really horrible job converting. I mean, the Jazz made ball handling mistakes. They didn't finish at the level that they could. What the Clippers brought was energy and effort to match the mismatch, if you will, in execution of both teams. And so I expect the Jazz to play a lot better in Game 3 or in Game 4 off of Game 3, but the Clippers also have a level of improvement to show. And so how do you score 132 points, win by 26, and say you can play better? Well, it's a matter of taking care of the ball in crucial situations. It's a matter of realizing that when Rudy Gobert is in the paint, don't challenge him just to challenge him. Reggie Jackson, he had a particular drive. Nikola, he had a particular drive where he just laid the ball up there. And I mean, Rudy Gobert actually only had one block, but it was an emphatic one on Nicholas Batum. Batum had an outstanding game. He re-entered the starting lineup, and unlike any other game he's had this postseason, he was aggressive looking for his shot. Even the shot that he got blocked, it was like, all right, you see the energy's different. Terrence Mann came off the bench and he played with energy. And Terrence can be even more decisive than he was in Game 3. So it's just a matter of, can the Clippers peak? Can the Clippers account for the mistakes that the Jazz will adjust for, and in turn play an even more complete game? And I'll leave with this one last thought as far as what the Clippers can do better. They didn't start the game well at all. I mentioned the Jazz scored the first 8 points in Game 3, and that's a trend that has been the case in the entire series. The Jazz started both Games 1 and 2 on 10-2 runs. They started the second half of games 1 and 2 with 10-2 runs. The Clippers were a little bit better in the third quarter of game 3, but they still got outscored in the third quarter. It was still an 11-point game headed into the fourth. The Clippers can do a better job of just situational basketball to eliminate certain runs, and they should be able to tie the series if they just play their keys that way.
Play their keys that way. Don't get off to slow starts as well. Could be key. Last thing before I get you out of here, Law. I think a lot of times in sports, we look at things of what has occurred before, right? And how teams can have confidence from that. A lot of people who were skeptics of the Clippers said that, last year they blew a 3-1 lead, so they can't get it done. But I think there's a way of looking at this as saying in the previous series against the Mavericks, though the competition wasn't as strong, they came back from being down 2-0, and they could have confidence to do that again. Do you think the Clippers can come back again, win 4 out of 5, and win the series?
I'll tell you what, Dan. I mean, they're not going to have a 3-1 lead in this series, so I mean that's
right.
just that's the situation they're in right now. So you ain't got to worry about that. Hell, they might be down 3-1, and people forget. People got caught up in the Clippers. I mean, the Jazz blew a 3-1 lead in the playoffs to the same team the Clippers did last year. So when it comes down to making a comeback, it's like, can the Clippers do it? Yeah. Will they? Should they even put themselves in a worse position? They shouldn't want to be interested in that. Utah Jazz were the best team in the NBA this year. I mean, everyone had their focus on other teams, I'm sure. The Utah Jazz were the best team in the NBA. That's an objective fact. You saw it on the scoreboard. You saw it in the standings. They were the most complete team on both ends of the floor, offensively and defensively. I mentioned they're missing an all-star right now. That's not to say that if Mike Conley Jr. comes back, that he's going to be the Mike Conley Jr. that finally got to the all-star game this year. Hamstrings are tricky. We saw that in the Brooklyn series with James Harden, and you just never know. If you're the Clippers, you just have to worry about yourself. Take care of your business. You see the team, you respect what they do well, and you adjust to it. And I think the Clippers have done that. It's a shame that the Clippers fell down 2-0. I mean, you have to play a competitive 7-game series when the other team is chilling because they took care of their business in 5 against a lower seeded opponent. That's the breaks. That's the situation you put yourself in the regular season. And so that's a big factor in why they lost game 1. A big factor in why they lost game 2 is because they took too many runs and fell down 21. Even though they had a fourth quarter lead, overcame that 21-point third quarter lead that the Jazz had. You spend too much energy trying to come back that you don't have enough to finish, and you wind up losing the game off of that. So the Clippers have taken probably too long to get all the things that they need to get right in the series. They won game 3, which is what we would call a just-in-time kind of win. They need to just keep it up. The margin of error is slim because of the series, and the margin of error is even slimmer because the Jazz are that damn good. Can the Clippers do it? Yeah, but it remains to be seen, man.
Remains to be seen. We will see what the Clippers can do in Game 4, Law, against those Jazz, and if they can even it up. If you like Law, what he had to say here, please check out his work at theathletic.com. He does great work covering the Clippers there. I encourage you to read and get all the great coverage on the Clippers. Law, I got to thank you, man, for coming on for the first time on the NBA Exchange. Hope to have you on back again.
Hey, thank you. It was a real pleasure, and shout out to NBA Jam. I see that background, so.
Oh, man, you know what time it is. NBA Jam fan here. I like that you are too. See, I know you definitely got to come back on. Absolutely. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.